Esther.
I'm Nick.
And we are Fouch Family Off-Grid. We are doing another one of our sit-down chats today. It's been a little while since we've sat down to hang out. These are very freeform and very casual, and the idea is that you get a little behind-the-scenes look at what we're actually thinking and feeling that isn't all covered up with sweeping music and scenery.
Or sawdust. No sawdust.
No sawdust. So the last time we did this was about a month ago, and we were really worried because we thought it was spring. How'd that turn out?
We were wrong.
We were wrong.
We got a foot of snow on March 1st.
Yeah.
Sort of overnight and into the day. So we're in full winter mode. Maybe even more than last year. I don't know. But we really thought we were getting off easy, and then winter got around to it. And so we're doing winter stuff.
But we're also doing really genuinely preparing for spring stuff. And I actually feel great because in that kind of panic that I had a month ago and thinking that I was going to be outside digging within the next few weeks, I felt really unprepared for the massive garden and gardening efforts that I'm going to be doing this summer, and I was kind of stressed out about it. But now I'm like, oh, March, yes, this is what I expected, and I feel really prepared. I feel great.
Right, but that little window where you thought, oh crap, it's tomorrow.
Right.
Got you thinking about it.
It did.
Got some lists made, and so we're probably in a better place.
I think so. And I think that has happened to me before. It might happen to me every year. There might be someone out there who's watched it happen to me every year. But I think it's really useful that nature does this. Nature sends advance warning. You know, you get like the really crazy winter storm in October that makes you go, oh shoot, do we have our wood put up?
Right.
But then you have another month, but then maybe you actually got your booty in gear and took care of business. So that's kind of what happened to me. With that kind of fall spring that we had. It wasn't unusual temperatures for here, but we got our normal winter. We just got it really late.
Right. It allowed us to do more building than we would have, but then we had building projects in process when all that snow hit, so it was a little challenging to wrap some of those up. But I think we did pretty well for just sort of pushing through the season.
So today we are going to kind of catch you up on projects that we've done and projects we're heading into, and then I'm also going to tell you a couple stories about why we ask each other what are our true things and why Sadie says goodnight, little house. So can you catch us up on? We're not going to show the lists. We're getting bored with that. And also the lists are getting really freeform right now because there's a lot of different directions that Nick can go. So can you just kind of share what projects are on deck?
Coming up or what we just wrapped?
Both. Let's do
Okay, so we did I guess you might call it a soft opening of the mudroom. So insulation's all in, doors are on. It's fully functional. We put together just a baker's rack for starting plants in there, and sort of moved a couple of like the hat rack and things in there. So we are going to get a little custom on that. We're going to go ahead and do wall surfaces and hooks and a bench and all this stuff to really make it awesome and ours. But major construction is done and we can use the space.
And as Nick was doing the insulation, this was just yesterday that he did the ceiling insulation, I said this is the last boring project. The insulation is the last boring project. And of course, no offense to anybody who doesn't think insulation is boring. But what I'm saying is that any direction that he goes now is going to be really exciting and fun. He has wall surfaces to do, which are going to be beautiful. He has furniture to make, which is going to be gorgeous. Or he can trim out our living room, which is going to be an extraordinary, wonderful thing after living in the house with no trim for a year and a half.
All good things. By the way, I said the same thing, that the insulation was boring, especially in the ceiling. It's not the funnest part of the process. Um, so yeah, mudroom.
And then your shop.
Right. So I just this morning shoveled out the sawmill. So we're gonna start milling some lumber to make parts of the shop out of. Yeah.
So it's kind of a day by day, whatever he feels like working on thing, which is my favorite. It doesn't feel like we are under the gun anymore as far as we have to get doors on that mudroom so that I can start plants so that we can have things go in sequence. I have everything I need to start the plants. I'm only waiting for Sadie to be home, which is the most fun reason to be waiting. We're probably going to put our baker's rack all the way inside the living room to start. We can completely warm the mudroom now that it's insulated just by opening the door, the interior door, so that the house heats that space. It isn't going to be as warm though as the living room. So I'm just going, we're doing soil blocks this year, and I'm just going to start blocking up as many things as I can fit on that rack.
Which is a lot. I mean, we're gonna start more things than we have space to plant out for sure, and that won't be a bad problem to have. Is to have too many plants.
And just to clarify, we're not responding to the weather in deciding whether it's time to start plants. We're actually a little bit late for some things. Because what we're looking at is a planting out date, which is related to the last frost date in our area. The last frost date in our area is estimated the first week of May. So we just kind of round that off to Mother's Day. And what that becomes is the day which we're willing to cover plants if it freezes.
Right.
So it may well freeze after Mother's Day. And actually what's more likely to happen to our plants rather than a hard freeze is hail. We have had hail in April every year, or hail in April every year, and usually hail in May as well.
At some point, yeah.
And so there's a mad dash to go out and cover plants and protect them from the hailstorm if that happens after the plant out date. But so we're planting things a certain distance back from that planting out date. And then of course we're also doing some things which are frost resistant. I would have liked to start onions a couple of weeks ago because they really take a long time to get to full maturity, but it's not too late to start them. And we have a lot of different places that we can plant things we don't know how far I'm going to get with my digging and ground preparing. That part kind of depends on how soon I get out there and how strong I am and how fast the digging happens. But
you don't want to start that digging by shoveling snow.
I might though.
Yeah.
I might. I might have him with his propane torch out there, melting, thawing the ground for me. I'm so ready.
Yeah, I imagine if we got the snow off of it, that the sun would actually thaw that top layer that's frozen up. So maybe there's something to that.
So I guess that's kind of the wrap up on our projects as far as what to expect. I'm feeling really good about where we're at right now. I feel like we made it through the hard winter, and that our kind of almost overly compulsive list making and staying on top of things and also resting, but just really keeping that kind of long-term vision and staying on it has got us through the hard part. And in the spring, there are so many options. There's a little more freedom. There's less survival stress.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing about the list now and why it's not as important to, keep it quite as tight is because we do have more options. We can just sort of pick something and it's going to be good progress. Whereas when you're battling winter and and all of the conditions really dictate what you can and can't do, you got to stay organized. So when you have an opening, you can actually get things done. But we just have more and more openings now.
Mm-hmm. So congratulations to everyone in the Northern Hemisphere. We've made it through the worst of it. It's easier now. Spring is coming.
You heard it here.
So I wanted to share with you today some stories about true things. This is a bit inspired by having Milo in the emergency room this past week. I am surprised that I'm in such a good mood today because the last 4 days have been really hard for us. In fact, maybe I have a little bit of like a let out of jail look to me right now because Milo's definitely better. We're definitely okay.
Yeah. And so I think we mentioned it somewhere else, but so he just had a cold and kind of flu symptoms, and but then he started getting spots, and his energy level was really bad. And so we took him into just a local clinic, and they actually referred us to the ER. The ER is not our first choice by any means. And it turns out he had a viral infection, which is really just a way of saying he got really, really sick. So his body took quite a while to fight it off, and he's pretty worn out from that, but he's certainly on the mend. His color is back, and he's talkative again. So not scary, but stressful anyway.
But it was good to see Milo getting to be a big kid. I mean, he's 10 now, and it was good to see him kind of navigating these problems. I'm never happy to see anyone get sick or anyone to have a misfortune. But it was good to be able to see somebody that I love navigating that. And I wanted to tell you the story about the two things, but I have to tell the backstory first. So one of the reasons that we live off-grid, and perhaps the primary reason that we have pursued the life that we have, is a sense of needing to be connected to a natural reality, as opposed to a completely manufactured reality. And of course, there are all sorts of gradations between them, but we find it to be a very healthy thing to be able to connect with the seasons, the weather, with growing things, plants and animals, and atmospheric conditions that have a grounding influence different from electrical appliances or things on screens.
Right, or climate controlled buildings, or just any of those things that you sort of take for granted when you live that way. So much of your surroundings are manufactured, and the air that you breathe is manufactured in a way and prepared for you. And so being out here is a way of observing what the natural world is like, but also recognizing the amount of our own energy and embodied energy and in things it takes in order to be in it, I guess. If that sounds ridiculous, so be it.
Well, I want to clarify too that we didn't know that when we moved out here. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to go move out to the woods in order to be more aware of our embodied reality. Did you say that?
No, I didn't say that.
I didn't say that. But we knew we were looking for something. We knew that our life as it...
Right, we were just kind of looking for quiet in a way, like to shut off a whole bunch of noise and sort of be alone and figure stuff out, right? But once you do that for a little while, you come away with some observations.
So it was our first year in the yurt. And again, Nick was out of town. All the interesting things happen when Nick is out of town. So it wasn't the time that we had a bear come, and it wasn't the time, I know you've all heard that story, and it wasn't the time that I had to take the door of the yurt off with a crochet hook. I think most of the people have heard that story too. But it was another time that Nick was out of town, and I had given the kids cartoons on a laptop so that I could take care of, and this is when Sadie was not yet a year old, and Stella and Milo were 4 and maybe 6, 4 and 5 or 4 and 6. So, mom trenches, and And we hadn't had much screen time because we didn't have much electricity, but I had charged up the laptop and had a cartoon in there, and Milo was watching Superman. And I didn't watch it with him, didn't have any awareness of it, but something in that cartoon completely freaked him out. So it's bedtime and Dad isn't home and we live out in the woods, and I've got a 5 or 6 year old who's really not happy. And in order to help him to feel better, I said, well, let's remember your true things. So that I'm not even sure if he was more scared of the good guys or the bad guys. The whole thing just freaked him out. And so I said, what are your true things? And we sort of together, we walked out to the door of the yurt and we just looked out, and there was some moonlight on the trees, and I could just see him calm, as he was able to disengage that artificial reality or fantasy of the cartoon that had freaked him out, and to be able to just look at something real and also familiar and also beautiful, which was our environment. And because it was so effective that one time, it has become my parenting go-to. I say it all the time. I even say it when the kids are arguing. Remember your true things. This is not about that bouncy ball or whatever it is that you're arguing about. What are your true things? And they're able to say, the different kids will say different things. Sadie will say, my mommy and daddy, or the little house. She'll talk about things that love her or whatnot, and Milo will come up with more advanced things. What were you going to say?
Nothing.
Okay, I'll keep going. So when we were in the doctor's office, and it actually is our family doctor, but we haven't been in a couple years. He doesn't go to the doctor very often. We had gone to the doctor to take care of this problem, and it's Friday afternoon, and she says, I don't want to send him home with these symptoms on Friday afternoon for the whole weekend. You need to go to the children's hospital. And again, Milo, so unhappy. Just, an older kid, but the same feelings as that little 6-year-old. And so I said it again. The doctor stepped out to the way they do and leave you in the room. And I said, okay, Milo, remember your true things. What can you think of? And he really struggled for a while. And then he said, organic potatoes. And I was like, all right, organic potatoes.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. So what are organic potatoes good for? Good for growing, good for eating, good for remembering what matters when you're scared in the doctor's office. And then later, when we were in the emergency room, he looked up on the ceiling, and this is a children's ward, so there are pictures on the ceiling, just drawn, of birds and rainbows and clouds and things. And he said, oh, I think I could draw a bird like that. And I could see him kind of drop in to being calm and being okay from the picture on the bird, the picture of the bird. And I thought that's a real thing that happens with us, that we can be healed and stabilized by what we call our true things.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that being out here really makes it easy.
It does.
Those true things in the city, at least the places where we lived, they were hard to come by. You had to go somewhere to go see something that occurs naturally, and those are, I guess that's why. Those are the things that we call our true things, the ones that happen with us or without us. And part of why I like that, and I like that we started small and we started in the yurt, is we were painfully aware of what it takes to provide for yourself all of those things that you take for granted.
Yeah.
In the city, or in our previous situations where you turn on the tap and water's going to come out, and if it doesn't, you get on the phone, and out here there was nobody to call, and we had no phone. So I like that we did it that way, and it really helped us to connect to each other and the things we need, and those true things.
So people go off grid for different reasons, and we didn't actually necessarily aim to be off grid. We were just looking for a better way of living, and step by step have found our way to where we are right now, and I don't think we're done yet. But in thinking about what we gain from this lifestyle and why it continues to be worth it to both of us, I think for me that phrase "true things" pretty much encapsulates it.
Absolutely.
And so I wanted to share that with you, but I also wanted to tell you why Sadie says "Goodnight, little house." It happened on the second night that we were in the house, and I didn't stage it. I didn't stage it the first time. I do often remind her now, but it was a true things moment because she was nervous sleeping in her own bed in the new house.
That's right. Well, right, to set it up, when we moved into the house, that's when she got her big girl bed. She had been in a pack and play next to our bed, and then after she kind of outgrew that, she was just in bed with us, which...
Well, she slept with Stella.
Right, but
mostly she slept with us, yeah.
It's pretty much split time there. So anyway, she got her own big girl bed when we moved into the house.
Right, and so on that second night that we were in the house, I was helping her get ready for bed, and she started saying goodnight to all of her true things, and it was like the storybook, Goodnight Moon. It was so adorable. I ran and grabbed my camera, and she was like, "Good night, trees. Good night, wind. Good night, star." I was like, "Oh my gosh, get the camera. This is adorable." Good night, little house. And so that is how that happened. That's become the trademark in our vlogs, that she says goodnight to the little house, but that is how it started.
So I guess for us, it took sort of a drastic maneuver to actually move away and physically, limit our media intake and our connection to what else was happening in the world. But I don't think that's necessarily the only way to do it. I think that, if you're wanting to make things simpler, it probably just takes looking away. And go ahead and find some true things and shut off the noise for a while, and just trust yourself and know that you're not really missing out on much, and you might even like what you see when you look away. All right, thanks for watching.
See you next time. Just tell me about your true things. What are your true things?
The sky, my family, dark and the light, ice cream, flowers, spring, my sister,